Everyone. I have a happy note, but two, one, I get to introduce our guest speaker today, but two, I get to wear a sweater today because it's not stinking hot like it's been for the last 3 weeks. Thank you. All right. So, Chad. So, Chad, are you a Nantais or a Nada, or how do you pronounce your last name?
Nantais.
Thank you. Chad Nantais is the local leader of Strong Towns Kingsville, a grassroots advocacy group working to make Kingsville a more walkable, connected, and vibrant community. Through initiatives like increasing the tree canopy and improving cycling infrastructure. Under this leadership, the group, sorry, I should have printed this a bit larger, but anyways, my apologies. The group recently completed Rooted in Kingsville. I don't know if you people have seen that on Facebook. They've been counting the trees in Kingsville. A tree mapping contest that engaged residents in cataloging over 3,300 trees across town. Chad brings a builder's mindset to civic work, honed over more than 2 decades as a software developer and a first-hand appreciation for great urban design, gained from almost a decade living and working across Europe. He's also driven by a belief that small, practical, locally led projects, not big top-down plans, are what make towns thrive. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Chad for a really super interesting talk. There you go, Chad.
Thank you very much, Deb. It's an honor to address the Rotary Club of St. Clair, Windsor this morning. And this might be, I've been to Rotary Club meetings before, and I understand the Rotary Club is all about service. So there might be some aspects of how Strong Towns works that resonate with the Rotary Club. So with that being said, I will, I guess I can share my screen. Just let me know when you can see the wonderful picture on the screen.
Well, yeah. Good.
Okay, good. So let's go back to March of this year. You know, March, springtime, you hear the sound of birds everywhere, right? They're nesting, they're coming out after the winter. The only problem is this March, my wife and I noticed, and again, this is only our second winter, or our second year being back here from Europe. So we hear, instead of the sound of birds, we're hearing the sound of wood chippers roaring around the ravine behind us and the neighborhoods all over. And we weren't the only ones that noticed this. But it got me to thinking, we don't really have a lot of forest in Essex County to begin with. And I also noticed there are like a dozen tree removal companies in our region, just around Kingsville, actually. So my wife and I were asking each other, like, what trees are left to cut down? So I'm here today to explain what is Strong Towns Kingsville and what is Strong Towns, and also why is Strong Towns Kingsville mapping thousands of trees. My name is Chad Nantais, and I'm the local leader of Strong Towns Kingsville. So a little background on me quickly. I grew up in Kingsville, and then I wrote my last high school exam, and my brother drove me to the Detroit bus depot, and I went straight out to Vancouver to go to university. So most of my adult life has been lived away from Kingsville. So I've lived in places like Vancouver, Whistler, Waterloo, several places across Europe, and I've actually never owned a car in my life. I've never had to. Why? Because all of these communities that I've lived in happen to be places where you can walk to get all of your business done. You can go to the doctor, get your hair cut, you can buy your groceries. You never need to own a car. The last place that my wife and I lived was in Belgrade, Serbia, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you know any Serbs or their neighboring Croats or Macedonians. It's in the Balkan region. The city we lived in was over 2,500, it was about 2,500 years old. And it just had a really interesting sense of community as a result of that. And everything is within walking distance, and the streets are just full of people. You're constantly bumping into friends, old and new, and it's just a wonderful feeling to see everyone face to face every day. See children walking to school. So that's what became our normal over the past 7 years. Then, again, 2 years ago, we moved back to Kingsville. And what really struck me was the huge contrast that these European cities and towns, they just always had people outside all year round. And coming back to Kingsville, seeing no people on the street, no children playing, and everyone is just basically driving their car, and the car's windows are tinted. People go straight home into their garage, shut the garage. There was no sign of human life. So that was pretty troubling. And I think for the first year, I just kind of complained about it. But then in about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, early 2025, I saw this article online from this young gentleman from Windsor. And this is Zach Teal. He's an architect. And he was on CBC News here talking about something that he was starting in Windsor last year called Strong Towns. So there is a Windsor Essex Strong Towns founded by Zachary Teal. And what he's done is sort of become the hub for many advocacy groups across Windsor to coordinate different efforts and to bring the Strong Towns approach to Windsor and the region. So, what is Strong Towns? Strong Towns was started 15 years ago by a city planner from Brainerd, Minnesota. And in his job as a city planner, he noticed that the way that we develop our towns and cities is not the way that we would run our businesses or our household budgets because they're always going into the red. And there was one consistent pattern that was causing them to go into the red, into debt, and that is the scale of development. He realized that the development in North America is not developed like it is in Europe or in South America or anywhere else, developed around people. The development pattern in North America is entirely at the scale of how cars travel. So think about it. You get into your car and you have to drive 15 minutes to go out to the plaza, to go to the doctor. You have to drive, 30, 45 minutes to go to work. And the cost of maintaining the roads and the infrastructure to do this is what keeps our municipalities constantly fighting just to stay above water. And he realized that if we keep doing this across North America, we will never stop having money problems in our municipality. I know in Kingsville last year, we were $8 million, and this is Kingsville, a small town, 25,000 people, $8 million short in our ability to cover our infrastructure costs. Every single kilometer of road, just the road alone, costs $9,000 a year per kilometer to maintain. So building our communities at the scale of cars rather than at the scale of people is an extremely expensive luxury, and the bill is landing very hard. So we are now up to there's well over 300 of these Strong Towns local conversations, so Strong Towns chapters across North America. And the fastest growing regions for new Strong Towns groups starting up are actually in Michigan and Ontario, which tend to be some of the most car-oriented communities in North America. So after learning about what they were doing in Windsor with Windsor Essex Strong Towns, I got to thinking back in June of last year. I thought Kingsville has a really strong service organization culture, a lot of volunteering, a real grassroots sort of feel. So I bet that Kingsville could actually have its own Strong Towns chapter, which is kind of strange. I mean, it's just a really small town. We already have Windsor Essex Strong Towns, but I just thought Kingsville has a really distinct sort of identity and culture. What if we had our own? So we had our first meeting in June of 2025, and right off the bat, we had one of our counselors, Mr. Thomas Neufeld, who's actually running for mayor now. He dropped in on our very first meeting, and he was very interested because he's been supporting these principles for many years in Kingsville, including, we should be building up rather than building out. So, and I'm not talking about skyscrapers, but just instead of building a one-level plaza, why not build something that has housing above it, like you see all over the place outside of this region. So he was very supportive of active transportation, all that. So it was very heartening to see that someone from council was supporting the idea of Strong Towns in Kingsville. So Strong Towns is oriented around one question to start it all off is where are people in our communities struggling? So early conversations that I was having with people as I was going out and promoting Strong Towns, they were mentioning, okay, if you're about walkability, we have this beautiful greenway in Kingsville. It goes right through town and then out of town towards the golf course and then towards Leamington, towards Colasantes. But the problem with our greenway is there's no benches. So if you're a senior or if you have trouble walking or you just have trouble catching your breath, you have nowhere to just sit and have a rest on the greenway. So one of the first initiatives we did was we reached out to IRCA, who is in charge of the Greenway, and we proposed to them 16 spots in Kingsville where we could build benches with wood. Like we could make it a volunteer thing, get some businesses to donate, make the benches. Unfortunately, IRCA has policies about what benches are allowed to be put on the Greenway. So the benches have to look something like the one that's pictured. And they said, we can't quite do 16 right now, but we can do three. So now here we are a year later, and this isn't the actual bench, but this is what they're going to look like. And we've seen the foundations, the concrete slabs have been poured for three of them, so they've made good on it. So that was one of our early victories, making it a more walkable town. And then what we did next was we took it further and we said, what if we actually audit all of the sidewalks and crossings in the main urban part of Kingsville? We have a lot of people who've retired here from up the Greater Toronto area. And in those communities, from Waterloo to Cambridge to Toronto to Barrie, they just have a lot more walking and biking infrastructure. So we audited 40 kilometers of sidewalk and crosswalks in Kingsville. And that means, for one thing, as you see with the measuring tape, the A the AODA, the Accessibility Association in Ontario, sets a standard that sidewalks have to be a minimum of 5 feet wide. And we were finding that much of the sidewalk in our town does not meet that standard. So what that means is you've got a lady pushing a stroller on one side of the sidewalk and then someone else is coming down. Somebody's going to have to get off the sidewalk, or someone's in a mobility scooter or wheelchair and somebody's going to have to get off the sidewalk. So we pointed all these things out. We also noticed the crosswalks. You'll see here, this is on Main Street in Kingsville. There are a lot of children that live around this crossing, and you'll see that there is a crossing going up and down to continue on Main Street. But this is also a very active crosswalk to go across Main Street to go to that church. There's always kids crossing to go wait for the bus on the other side, but there's actually no crosswalk line whatsoever there. So we have a ton of large trucks and transport trucks that go at a pretty good speed in this area. So it's things like this we noted in our audit. And then in December, when it was time to present the budget, the Kingsville Town Council was reviewing the budget for the year for 2026. And we took our audit to council and delegated and said, here are 150 deficiencies that we've noticed in sidewalks and crosswalks across Kingsville, and we think that you should increase the budget. Kingsville's budget for anything to do with sidewalks and crosswalks is about $280,000 a year, which only allows them to repair about, I'd say about 10 blocks, 10 to 15 blocks of sidewalk per year. And that's not a lot. At this rate, the amount of sidewalk deficiencies and crosswalk deficiencies that we noted in our report would take decades at that rate of budget. But at the same time, like the budget for fixing roads is just far, far, far surpasses the budget for fixing where people walk and where people bike. So back to the wood chippers. This was the next thing. So this is where we are in March when we're starting to notice a lot of trees are being taken down in March. And that trees really bring an identity to the town and they bring shade. We had friends visiting from Michigan and they were seniors, and one of them got heat stroke walking through Kingsville when they were visiting last year due to lack of shade in the public spaces. So we really started to notice coming out of the winter, like, geez, a lot of trees are being cut down and These are mature trees that take over 50 years to grow, and they're being cut down just like they're weeds. So this kind of got under my skin, and I talked to some of our other members, and it's a really hot button issue. And then I got into the research. When I got into the research, it was a no-brainer. If you look at this map here, this is from the Ministry of National Resources. This study was done in 2018, and you can see across Ontario, southwestern Ontario, green is good. Green means a higher amount of tree cover. It means like over 35%. So you're getting up into that green belt area as you start to head up towards Ottawa. And then around Toronto, obviously the urban area is not too good in the center, but then they've got their green belt. But then once you get down south of London, now things are getting troublesome. You've got all this red. And then especially when you get to Chatham, Kent, and Essex County, we have a tree cover that is, some people say it's 2%. Some people say it could be as high as 8%. Nobody really knows, and that's another problem that we don't even measure it. So this is a big problem in terms of public health because trees bring shade, trees clean the air. As we saw recently, we've had heat waves, we've had smoke clouds roll in, but we don't have the defensive forest to help us deal with this. So we lead in Windsor and Essex County, we lead in a lot of things that we shouldn't be leading in. We shouldn't be above average in disease rates. We shouldn't be above average in mental health. We shouldn't be above average in, we have problems with soil erosion. In Kingsville, we have tons of problems with flooding. We can't afford to deal with all the storm water. People down by Cedar Beach, they're constantly dealing with every time there's a storm, they have flooded basements. So it's a big problem in this region. And that goes back to strong towns, right? Because we're about infrastructure. At the heart of it, we want smarter development of infrastructure. We don't want infrastructure that's going to keep us broke all the time, where we don't have enough money to fix what we need. So back to Mr. Teal. This is Zach Teal again from Strong Towns Windsor. This is what he did. He and his group did a year ago. They mapped 6,000 trees in Windsor as part of the municipal tree inventory. So Windsor is ahead of us in tracking what kinds of trees are there, how big are the trees, how mature are they, and where are they distributed across Windsor. And Windsor's been doing pretty good at this, actually. The city of Windsor takes this seriously, that there's a tree inventory and starting to think of trees as infrastructure because the shade from the trees, the absorption of stormwater, filtering the air for public health, these have value, just like our sewers, just like our roads. So Windsor Essex did this, and then I made this post on Facebook back in March, and our Strong Towns Kingsville page was like crickets when we put something out there. Nobody really cared. We had a few very supportive people, 5 people would like the post or whatever. But when I posted about our tree issue, about the wood chippers, about why is our tree cover so low? Why are we cutting down mature trees? People really got up on their hind legs. We had a lot of interest coming on Facebook. People were commenting about how valuable the trees are to their town. They were giving memories that they've had around certain mature trees in Kingsville growing up here. They were offering help we weren't even asking for. Can I plant trees? Can I, help map trees? Whatever. So this was the issue that really brought Strong Towns Kingsville into the conversation in Kingsville. So fast forward a little bit to when we actually started the Rooted in Kingsville contest. So it's a contest to see who can map the most trees. The Kingsville businesses really showed up. We had lots of sponsors. We had great prizes. We had stuff like $100 gift certificates to Paglioni Winery and several gift certificates to Call Sanny's and the Butcher. Just everybody showed up and got behind this initiative. So here we are covered in our local newspaper, South Point Sun, at our tree mapping tutorial. This is where we kicked it off. I think we had about 20 people or so, maybe a couple dozen people came out to this to learn how to map trees using the same app that Windsor Essex Strongtown used. And it turned out we ended up mapping over 3,300 trees in a 6-week period. And here are the winners. We had an award ceremony at Call Sandy's on July the 4th. There I am on the far left, and to the right of me is Mary Rayom. She's there with her daughter Evelyn, who's not even a year old. They just moved back to Essex County a few months ago, and she went straight into action, into service. She and her daughter, on their stroller walks mapped 1,100 trees on their stroller walks. So that level of service and commitment, and then you keep going down the line. Gina to the right of her mapped like 500 trees. We had someone else who wasn't there who mapped 850 trees. So these people were just obsessive about mapping these trees on this app. And again, this all goes back to what's the next smallest thing that we can do to reduce the struggle that our neighbors are having. And it turns out that mapping trees, that was the thing that everybody feels like they can do. Everybody felt like when we did the sidewalk audit, there was a few people who were really interested. But when we did the tree mapping, so many people came out and did it. I think we had a total of like 45 people that were registered. And we had about a total of people that actually mapped trees. We had about 22 that actually did the mapping. So it's because it was something that everybody felt they could do and they could relate to. So this is what's called the Strong Towns public investment model. And it's very simple. And I recommend that you do it today. Take a look around your neighborhood or while you're driving and just ask yourself, humbly observe, where do people struggle in our community? And then ask yourself, what's the next smallest thing that I can do right now to address that struggle? It could be that a sidewalk is covered in weeds and it's a tripping hazard. Go out and get the weed whacker and clear the sidewalk. We've done that here. We did that down by Lakeside Park. The overgrowth and the cracks of the sidewalk was getting to the point where it was about 4 inches thick. Someone could trip. So go do that thing and do it right now. Don't set up a committee. Don't make a plan. Just go and do that thing. This is Strong Towns, all this in the spirit of doing the small thing and not doing the big thing. We're not about the mega project. We're not about the giant development. We believe, again, it goes back to that model that you see in other parts of the world. Cities like Belgrade that have lasted for 2,500 years are built around this, that a strong town is built by many hands, not just a few developers, not just top down by the government. It's built by you and your neighbors. When I was in Italy, you see when they're doing the foundation for a new building and the construction workers are out there, you'll start to see senior Italians circling around the construction site. And they're there and they're offering their opinions on how that foundation should be laid. Everybody feels like they play a part in the construction and development of the environment that people live in. It's built by people and for people. And that's what this is all about. So what's next for Strong Towns Kingsville? We're taking this tree map data of 3,000 plus trees, and it's in a format that we can actually hand over to the municipality of Kingsville so that the administration can start a municipal tree inventory in Kingsville, just like Windsor has, just like Amherstburg has, just like Essex has started. Chatham-Kent has one. So we're just trying to get up to speed with this new idea that trees are infrastructure. Then what else is next? We have arranged to do a tree planting in Kingsville with IRCA, with the Essex Region Conservation Authority. It's going to happen in October. So that's going to be our first, using our data to start to plant the trees, the species that need to be planted in the right area. And then here's a big project. You might not know it, but Kingsville is about to have 3,000 new homes built on the west side, which is on the left side of this image that you see on the screen, kind of by that green line running up and down. So we're thinking with 3,000 homes coming out there, that's a huge, it's going to change the face of Kingsville. It can be done right or it can be done wrong. The right way to do it is to make sure that the people that live out there have ways to get around without a car. Because if we don't, we're going to have 3,000 households worth of new vehicles that are going to have to drive east. So to the left, they're going to have to go through town. They're going to make our downtown even less walkable. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that there's stuff out there on the west side to keep people happy, engaged. Hopefully someone puts stores out there so people don't have to transit through town. But one of the things we are pushing for in cooperation with the Jack Miner Bird Sanctuary and a few other groups here is a greenway. So Kingsville already has a greenway, but we're talking about a north-south greenway that would be on the west side of these developments so that the people that live out there and all the citizens could use this trail to go. It would connect the waterfront down towards Cedar Beach and be able to go all the way to Jack Miner. So that would finally connect Jack Miner Bird Sanctuary for pedestrians and cyclists connected to downtown Kingsville. And this is very important. You're all familiar with Central Park in New York City. Well, this man, Frederick Law Olmsted, was the designer of Central Park, and he was the designer of the park system in Boston, and the designer of the park system in Buffalo, New York. This man defined how parks and parkway systems are developed in North America. And what he said was, it's very important when you're designing a community, start with the green parts first. And that's what we have to do in Essex County. Our tree cover is dangerously low. It needs to be our number one priority. I know there's all kinds of issues. I understand that people are worried about taxes increasing in this time of inflation. I get it. But if we don't have trees and we keep cutting down trees, we will become a desert. Everyone will have to buy their own respirator. And I'm sure that will cost more than the tax increases of populating this area with more trees. So it's time for Essex County to think long term instead of always playing reaction. So we start with the green parts, then we can talk about making our streets and roads more walkable. Because those things, the green parts and the roads, they all take the longest to change. And that's why we need to start with those things. So the goal is eventually we can have people returning back to the streets, back to the public spaces. People will feel less isolated. We can start to feel like we can work together and serve each other once again. So before I go, I just wanted to say, if you want to know more about Strong Towns Kingsville, if you're a Facebook person, just go on Facebook and search for Strong Towns Kingsville. If you're an Instagrammer, it's at Kingsville Strong, or you can visit our website at kingsvillestrong.com. Thank you again, Rotary Club of Windsor St. Clair. I am honored to be your speaker today, and I hope that you got some value out of this presentation.
I want to thank you very much for getting up nice and early to be with us this morning. I was very interested when I saw your Facebook page on the tree mapping because I have been following Strong Towns for a couple of years. I saw a presentation in Hamilton, and they were talking. What got me is I'm an environmentalist, and they were talking about not using up our green space around the cities. And I thought, oh, okay, that's great. And then they started talking about the reasons why and the tax issue. The different types of buildings. So now this is just another iteration of what Strong Towns means. So if anybody in the club is interested in more information, there are the links there that Chad has placed in on the page there. But I also have the videos, Chad, that you've sent me that gives you more explanation of the different levels that Strong Towns looks at. And so if anybody's interested, I have that information and I can send that to you. But thanks again for coming out. This is really interesting, and certainly for somebody who's environmentally slanted as I am, this is a keen interest to me. So thanks very much.
Thank you.